Welcome back to the Engineered Angler. I'm back in the shop and I'm not going to be messing with those lures. What I'm actually doing is a follow-up to that crappie fishing video I did, the last one. Little clacker float that I've been making. It's just kicking butt. It's so much fun to fish with. Let me show you how to make them. It's pretty simple, but there's a couple of things you got to know to get it to work right. Okay, well, let's get started. Let me tell you what you're going to need. First of all, you'll need some hand tools. You will need a drill and some small drill bits. An 1/8 inch. This is a 2mm or what's that? 3/32 and a 1/16. I recommend using these little oval floats. They're pretty inexpensive. I think I paid 50 cents for these. These are kind of the smallest one you really want to use. If you go smaller, it won't really float well. But these work really well. They're small. They're not very intimidating. They cast nicely and they don't make a big splash. And these are, let me measure it up. The styrofoam part of it is actually 1.5 inches. So if you're going to go with that style, with the cigar style, you want to use something slightly larger. This one is actually right at 2.5, just at 2.5 the styrofoam. And this one will work well. Today we'll make one out of the cigar and we'll make another one out of the little oval. So the other things you'll need is some beads. You can get some glass beads from Bass Pro or something and pay like $3 for like 15 of them, or you can buy like 300 of them 98 cents a little packet at Walmart. This is really the way to roll. These are brass hollow balls. If you can get a hold of these, certainly use these. These make a little louder noise, but they're hard to get a hold of. The other things you're going to need are some rivets. Now I use rivets because I want a metallic sound at the ends, and you can see on this one that I've got a little inserted rivet right at the end of this. You'll need two types of beads. You'll need some kind of heavy bead, that means glass or metal, and you're going to need a light bead, that means plastic. So this little diamond looking bead is plastic, so is this, and they're really light. The plastic ones don't weigh anything. If you can't find any plastic ones, or you're just too embarrassed to go buy a bag of plastic beads at the Hobby Lobby or whatever, this is actually an airsoft pellet. This is easy enough to turn into a bead. All you got to do is take 1/16 bit, get a pair of pliers that's got the little crimping gap in it, that little hole right there, and you can just set it right in there and it'll hold it pretty nicely. There you go. Now you have a plastic bead. That's easy enough to do. You'll also need some little swivels. These are number 7s. And of course, the wire. This is a number 10 stainless steel leader wire. Okay, these guys come with these little inserts. They have a tiny little hole in them, really meant to run your line through. A little less than 1/16 of an inch. So first thing you have to do is ream that out. It has to be a bigger hole so that you don't have to worry that the wire bends a little bit and then it won't slide. So what I do is I go ahead and use a 3/32 bit and I go ahead and ream it through. Now I've already done these just to save time, but since it's already got a pilot hole, you can just ream it out. And then I take an 1/8 inch bit on this little one, and run that in about 1/4 inch. That 1/8 inch hole is so I can get the head of a rivet in there, and I'll show you how I do that. So I use these little 1/8 inch rivets. These are, I think they're 5/8 long. They don't need to be very long. If you've got 1/4 inch ones, that's perfect. So to shorten these, I have to cut them. I use a little cut off on my little Dremel, and I go back as far as I want to go, which is about 1/4 inch. And I just cut through the aluminum. I don't cut through the rod. And as soon as you cut through, it'll come loose and come right off that little rod. So, and I've drilled this out, so I just press these in. That 1/8 inch works perfect, and you really just put them in with friction. So you just press them in by hand and they'll stay there. The next thing is to go ahead and get your first twist eye on your wire. Do the first one by hand just so you can see that it's easy enough to do. And you can do it with this pretty easy. So I'll just do it with this just so you can see that it's not very difficult to do. So I'm going to set the diameter where I want it. I'm going to leave about 3/4 of an inch on this side. Remember, that's my measured side, so the side I want to bend around is the unmeasured side. So I'm going to bend that all the way around so it actually forms a 90-degree bend across the other one. And sometimes you got to move it around a little bit. There you go. So there it is. So now I've got that, and I can just hold this with my pliers and then just give it a wrap and a half with just by hand. It doesn't need much more than that. Remember, this is for crappie, and I've got a wrap and a half there. So I'm just going to cut off that tail. Okay, so the next thing is the length of this wire. The final length of this wire has to be 2 times the outside length of your bobber, no matter which bobber you end up using, whatever it is. 2 times that length, plus about an inch, inch and a quarter for your beads, depending how many beads you use, but you just have to have the length of the beads, plus about 2 inches for the final eye. So I cut this to 7 inches, which will work perfectly for this. So the first beads you put on are going to be the light beads, the plastic beads. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this plastic bead on there, and the little bead I just made, the little plastic pellet. There you go. Now I'll put my float in. It doesn't matter which way this goes in. There you go. The next beads are going to be the noisy beads. I'm going to go ahead and just use glass ones because those brass ones, I doubt very much anyone's going to have them. So that's kind of what's cool about having that assortment pack. Now you have to make the final eye, and that final eye has to hold your swivel. So what I'll do is I'm going to make this one on the little fancy machine. I know I allotted about an inch for this eye, and I know I want to have enough slider distance to equal the length of this, right about there. And I'm going to go ahead and do the initial turn with the shoulder. And before I forget, I got to put the swivel on. So come over here and twist it on. Okay, and that's it. It's got a nice noisy clack to it, and it's ready to fish. Get it in place and give it its wrap, and it's perfect. So there it is.